Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. It's 9 p.m. IST and we are coming to you live from the WION headquarters in Noida, India. This is Gravitas with a new look, but the same old spirit. Let's get started. Was there a secret Russian plot to assassinate Volodymyr Zelensky? Ukraine's security service claims it has arrested agents who were hired by Russian spies to assassinate the Ukrainian president. And that is our top story tonight. Here's what else we have lined up for you on the show. Was Russia using a Victorian-era Gothic mansion in Kent to hire spies in the UK? Boeing is in flames again. A Boeing plane landed in Istanbul without a landing gear. In Senegal, another Boeing plane skid off the runway and caught fire. Iran has released 5 Indian crew members of a Portuguese-flagged ship that was seized in April. In Germany, guess what? Political leaders are getting beaten up by the public. The West Nile fever has killed a person in India's Kerala. At least 6 others have been infected. We get to the details. Also in India, protein supplements are back in the headlines after a warning issued by one of the top medical bodies of the country. 2 rap artists in the US are fighting for supremacy, but in this war between Drake and Kendrick Lamar, it is women who are losing out. We will get you all of these stories and more tonight on Gravitas. Stay with us. Is there a secret plot to assassinate Volodymyr Zelensky? Is the Ukrainian president's life at risk? Ukraine claims to have foiled one such plot. It claims to have found moles and agents and made arrests. And the drama is on public display. So who was trying to assassinate the Ukrainian president? Well, Kiev is pointing the finger at Russia. Well, that's hardly surprising. Ever since the war started, Ukraine and the West have been telling the world that Zelensky's life is under threat, that Russians are trying to get him. And now Kiev is talking about a plot, one that it claims was hatched by Russia's Federal Security Service. This is the Russian spy agency. Ukraine says Federal Security Service had hired agents and assassins in Russia. Ukraine's State Security Service, SBU, has shared details and the stages of this alleged plot. Stage 1. The Russian spies would hire agents in Ukraine. Stage 2. The Ukrainian agents would be asked to find someone close to Zelensky, preferably his security guard. Stage number 3. This person would then kidnap Zelensky, take the president prisoner, preferably by cornering him when he is in office or when he is leaving the building. Stage 4, the assassin will kill Zelensky. This, Ukraine claims, was a secret plot to assassinate the president. And what's more, Ukraine claims the plan was underway. Russia had already hired agents in Ukraine. One of them was a colonel serving in Ukraine's State Guard service. Ukraine claims, in fact, that this agent was contacted and hired before the war started. He even met the handlers in another European country. Which one? That Kiev will not tell. But it claims that the meeting started taking place before the war. Cut to February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, one of the Ukrainian agents received a call from his Russian handler. He was told to find someone close to Zelensky's immediate entourage. In other words, the agent was told to activate stage 2 of the plan. Now, I must remind you at this point that all of these are claims that Ukraine is making. Now, with that out of the way, let's go back to the story. So, since when has Ukraine known about this alleged plot to the president? Alleged plot to assassinate the president? Also, how did Ukraine find out? Kiev will not tell, but on Telegram, SBU says only a handful of people knew about this counterintelligence operation that Ukraine was conducting. The Ukrainian security service saying it has intercepted the agents, searched their homes, recovered drones, warheads and mines. The agents have been taken into custody and they have been charged with treason and terrorism. In fact, Ukraine claims Russia had promised to pay these Ukrainian agents $50,000. That is, if the plot was successful, if Zelensky was successfully assassinated. Next question. Who ordered this daring plot to kill the Ukrainian president? Was it the Kremlin or some rogue Russian agents? Ukraine has names. The entire plan, Ukraine claims, was hatched by 3 FSB officers. The names are Maxim Besustin, Dmitro Perlin, and Alexei Kornev. Ukraine claims these men are from the department of the FSB's 5th Service. Perlin is the man who Ukraine claims was handling the agents across the border. He was the one in touch with the assassins. Zelensky's assassination, Ukraine claims, was supposed to be a gift for the Russian President Vladimir Putin as he marks his 5th term in office. And this is one of the points where the story starts to crumble. If the plot was hatched over 2 years ago, did the agents really plan to time it with Putin's inauguration, which happened just a couple of days ago? There is a difference of 2 years between the planning, recruitment, and the planned execution. So, would a seasoned agent really take such a risk of time? Also, how did the Russian agents possibly foresee that a war could break out between Ukraine and Russia? And then they assassinate Zelensky and present the news as a gift to Putin, who would be inaugurated for his 5th term in the middle of a war. Ukraine claims Zelensky was not the lone target. There were also more men that Russia wanted to assassinate. The first one is Ukraine's military intelligence chief, Kyrylo Bodanov. Ukraine claims the Russians had instructed the assassins to get Bodanov before the Orthodox Easter this year. It was on the 5th of May. The step-by-step plan was allegedly dictated to agents in Ukraine over a phone call. A spotter was to be hired. He would keep an eye on Bodanov's home. Russians would allegedly then strike his home with a missile. An agent would attack other people at the site with kamikaze drones. And then a second missile would hit the site. This would cover up the evidence of a drone attack. Ukraine claims this also was quite an elaborate plan involving code words and a safe house in the woods. The second target is a man named Vasyl Maliuk. He is the head of the SBU, the same agency that claims to have foiled the plot to assassinate Zelensky. Now, if you have been following the Ukraine war, you would know that the Ukrainian president has repeatedly spoken about attempts to assassinate him. In the year 2022, for example, Zelensky said there were 10 attempts to kill him. Last year, there were supposedly at least 5 plots, all hatched by the Russians. Last month itself, Poland said a man was arrested on allegations of involvement in a secret plot to assassinate Volodymyr Zelensky. And staying with secret plots and spies, our next story takes us to a Gothic castle, one that not many have heard about or seen. From the outside, the castle looks like a perfect retreat for a Hollywood celebrity looking to escape the glare of the paparazzi. It looks like an abode of a billionaire who is taking time out in the countryside to find his next big idea. But the walls of this castle are witness to something more sinister. This is the Seacock's Heath. It is a Kremlin outpost in the UK, a secret place for Putin's spies. The castle is located on the Kent-Sussex borders. It is owned by Russia. Earlier this week, this castle was stripped of its diplomatic status. So what really happened? Let's start off with the history first. This castle was built in the year 1871. It was for a former Chancellor of the Exchequer, the first Viscount Goshen. The castle had a 3-story galleried central hall. Its roof had intricate designs. There were Gothic arches. In 1946, the second Viscount, George, gifted his family home to the Soviet Union. It was a thank you gift for supporting Britain against the Nazis. The castle became a home for families of Russian trade delegation. During the Cold War, Soviet officials used this castle as a country home. Did they change the interiors? One report published in 1952 said that the walls now had portraits of the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Years passed, but the ownership of the castle did not. The castle eventually became the country retreat of the Russian ambassador to the UK. In the year 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Villagers began staging protests outside the Russian castle. They sprayed pro-Ukrainian graffiti at its entrance, and soon Ukrainian flags were planted outside the castle. One thing led to another. Reports began emerging of drones being flown out of the castle. Locals said the drones would fly over their homes, the residential streets, and then return to the Russian castle. Were the occupants trying to send a message? Was it a warning or a threat? Also, who has been staying in this Gothic castle since the start of the war? Putin's spies and Russian Secret Service agents, say the villagers. Many find it strange that there is a Russian building in the heart of their village. To emphasize on the strangeness, some villagers point at multiple CCTV cameras installed in the castle. They talk about the expensive cars coming in and going out of the gate. Reports in British media speak of stranger things. They say the castle could have been used by Russian intelligence agencies to meet and recruit spies in the UK. In fact, reports also say the British intelligence agencies have been monitoring this castle for years. Earlier this week, British Home Secretary James Cleverly announced that Russia had been using this Victorian-era castle for intelligence purposes. And this is why the UK was stripping the castle of its special status. The villagers, we are being told, are now celebrating. What about the castle's occupants? The year 2024 has been a particularly turbulent one for the aerospace giant Boeing. Before we delve deeper, let's just take a step back and understand Boeing's significance in the aviation industry. Now, Boeing is a household name, synonymous with air travel. They are one of the world's largest manufacturers of commercial airplanes, after all, with their jets carrying a significant portion of global passenger traffic. In fact, estimates suggest that over 10,000 Boeing commercial airplanes are currently in service, transporting millions of passengers every day. This translates to a dominant market share. Boeing holds roughly half of the global commercial airplane market. Now let's rewind to the specific issues plaguing Boeing in 2024. The Boeing 737 MAX was finally cleared to fly again after a lengthy grounding due to safety concerns. This should have been a turning point for Boeing. However, Boeing's struggles were not over. In January, an incident with an Alaska Airlines flight raised fresh questions. A door plug blew out from one of Boeing's 737 MAX 9 planes mid-flight, raising fresh concerns about the company's manufacturing processes. This incident, by the way, occurred just as Boeing was trying to rebuild trust after two devastating 737 MAX crashes in 2018 and 2019, which tragically claimed the lives of 346 people. Imagine airlines having to postpone routes and scramble for alternatives. That's the kind of disruption these issues caused. Those crashes led to the grounding of the entire 737 MAX fleet worldwide for nearly 2 years. Investigations revealed design flaws in the aircraft, inadequate pilot training, and accusations of Boeing withholding crucial information from regulators. This resulted in hefty fines and a major leadership shakeup at the company. Adding fuel to the fire, concerns surfaced about Boeing potentially withholding information during the certification process for a new variant, the 737 MAX 7. This cast doubt on the thoroughness of Boeing's safety procedures. And as if that wasn't enough, there have been unrelated incidents with other Boeing 737 models. And this reignited worries about Boeing's overall manufacturing practices. And fast forward to early May, a Boeing 737 skid off the runway in Senegal, raising even more questions about the safety of these aircraft. These incidents, coupled with whistleblower reports, have taken a toll on Boeing's reputation. The recent FedEx incident and lingering questions about the 737 MAX 7 variant, Boeing faces an uphill battle to regain public trust. And just yesterday, a FedEx Boeing 767 cargo plane was forced to make a harrowing emergency landing at Istanbul airport. The aircraft's nose landing gear failed to deploy, causing the plane to skid on its back wheels and sending sparks flying as the nose scraped the runway. The investigation into the FedEx incident is currently underway, with the Turkish authorities leading the probe and the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board sending investigators to assist. So where does Boeing really go from here? Rebuilding trust with airlines, passengers and regulators is a monumental task. The company's new leadership has a monumental task ahead, ensuring the safety of its aircraft and restoring confidence in the Boeing brand. But you see, the path to recovery seems long and difficult. Boeing's future success hinges on its ability to prioritize safety and transparency. Whistleblower allegations have tainted the windows, but there are bigger problems. The plane itself needs refueling. Can Boeing weather this storm? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the sheer number of problems that Boeing has faced in 2024, making it a particularly challenging year for the company. Let's now talk about the Iran-Israel tensions. In the midst of the rising tensions earlier, an Israel-linked cargo ship was seized by Iran. And now, in a diplomatic breakthrough, 5 Indian sailors have been released. 1 Indian earlier already returned home. When was the ship seized? What really happened? Our next report getting you the complete story.
MSC Ares, the Israel-linked cargo ship that was seized by Iran on April 13. With 17 Indian nationals on board. 5 of the Indian sailors on board the vessel have now been released and have departed from Iran. It's a diplomatic breakthrough. The Embassy of India in Iran puts out this post on the platform X, saying, quote, 5 of the Indian sailors on MSC Ares have been released and departed from Iran today evening. We appreciate the Iranian authorities for their close coordination with the embassy and Indian consulate in Bandar Abbas, unquote. For those unversed, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy seized the container ship near the Strait of Hormuz. MSC Ares was last seen on April 12, sailing towards the Strait of Hormuz off the coast of Dubai. Iran said the container ship had Israeli links when it was taken, in parallel to Iranian forces launching a mass drone attack against Israel. There were 25 crew members on the Portuguese-flagged ship. Iran said the container ship had Israeli links when it was taken, amid heightening tensions between Iran and Israel. Apart from the 5 Indian sailors, a Filipino and an Estonian have also been released. Another Indian crew member had already been released. And Tessa Joseph from Thrissur in India's Kerala state returned safely to her homeland on April 18. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs had said that the others are safe, adding that they will be released once their contractual obligations are accomplished. The MEA spokesperson had earlier said that they had asked for consular access for these 16 people, and they received that. He said that the officers met them and there is no problem of any kind on the ship. The Iranian ambassador to India, Iraj Elahi, has also said that the Indian nationals are not detained and that they are free to go.
Our next story is about Germany. Its politicians are not safe. Let me explain how. 6 days ago, a politician in Nordhorn was attacked with eggs and then beaten up by a 29-year-old man. 5 days ago, German politician Matthias Eck was ruthlessly beaten up while hanging campaign posters in Dresden. The attackers left him with fractures to his cheekbone and eye socket. His injuries were so bad, he needed surgery. The same day, a member of the Greens party was shoved and spat at while putting up campaign posters, 2 of which were torn down. And prior to the attack, the 2 accused, who have now been arrested, were heard shouting, "Hitler salutes." 2 days ago, a senator from Berlin was hit over the head with a bag containing hard material. Now, these are incidents from just the past 1 week, but since the year started, there have been 22 such incidents. 22 incidents in the last 4.5 months. Compare that to the 27 incidents of attacks against politicians in all of 2023. So Germany is clearly seeing a sharp rise in political violence. Politicians are being beaten up while campaigning for elections. But why is this happening? What's behind the spate of violent incidents? The answer to that question is rather complicated. Many blame the far-right Alternative for Germany party, AfD. They say that the emboldened far-right has corrupted the political discourse with their inflammatory rhetoric. In the case of Matthias Eck, the police say that the attackers appear to have been influenced by right-wing extremist ideology. But members of the AfD party have also become victims of political violence. Last year alone, there were 86 incidents of violent attacks against politicians from AfD. Clearly, extreme hate and violence is being experienced across the political spectrum. Increasingly, politicians are not only being attacked, they are seeing pile of dung being dumped at the party offices, eggs being thrown at the windows, mailboxes being blown open. The attacks come at a time when politicians are busy campaigning for the European Parliament elections as well as the District Council elections.
The figures in recent years are obvious. We're talking about almost 3,000 attacks last year alone, and there will probably be even more this year. And then somehow, It is just accepted that a party office was attacked, that someone was insulted, but nothing really bad happened until something extreme happens.
Naturally, the German politicians are up in arms. They have expressed their concern about the rise in politically motivated violence. They are demanding stricter laws to safeguard themselves and their election workers from such violence. In fact, such is the level of anxiety that some politicians have even compared it to the political violence the country faced during the early 20th century with the rise of the Nazis.
My party is now asking if people want to help put up posters, and we've heard that an SPD member was beaten up in Dresden at night when putting up posters. Now, party members either say that they only put up posters in pairs, which I can absolutely understand, because then you're simply safer, or they say they're afraid to go out and put up posters.
And as concerns grew over the rise in violence, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz issued a strong condemnation. Listen in.
The party is now asking if people want to help put up posters, and we've heard that an SPD member was beaten up in Dresden at night when putting up posters. Now, party members either say that they only put up posters in pairs.
But the question is, what's really driving this level of hate? Political experts blame it on anger among the voters.
The attackers are obviously extremely dissatisfied and angry about politics. Politics simply something that does not correspond to their own ideas and wishes. On a deeper level, however, this has much more to do with the fact that people are more willing to use violence to assert their interests. And what interests are these? These are interests that are fed by economic and cultural insecurities, and that has simply come to a head over the years.
But can anger be the only reason behind the violence, or is there more to this than what meets the eye? After all, insults, threats, attempts at intimidation have long been a part of campaigning. So what's really changed now? You see, across Europe, people are losing faith in their governments. Political experts agree that misplaced priorities of the politicians, xenophobic rhetoric, inward-looking policies have led to an erosion of the open and progressive idea of Europe. On top of that, there is a cost of living crisis in Europe. It's a perfect mixture for economic and cultural insecurities to rise. Experts say that this has made people more willing to use violence. However, does anger towards politicians justify the use of violence? The answer is no. You see, violence is highly problematic for a liberal democracy. It can never be justified in any case. While politicians should refrain from resorting to extremism in their language, voters and the electorate can also make a difference with their actions. For instance, they can get involved in the local community and take a stand against violent acts. Politicians who have been attacked, such as Matthias Eck, will recover from the injuries, but it is the strength of democracy that will be left scarred. After all, violence is the antithesis of democracy. Let's now shift our focus to India, where fears of the West Nile fever outbreak have sent alarm bells ringing in the southern state of Kerala. What is the West Nile fever? Why is it called that? And why has it become a cause of concern? Let me explain this. Earlier this week, one person died in the South Indian state of Kerala from a disease called the West Nile fever. And in recent days, 6 other cases have been reported. Now, alarm bells are ringing. The health authorities in Kerala are on high alert. Authorities have ramped up pre-monsoon cleaning and are undertaking mosquito control efforts. Citizens have been told to stay vigilant and seek medical help in case they show signs of fever. So, what is the West Nile fever? It's a viral infection transmitted primarily by mosquitoes. It is caused by the West Nile virus, commonly found in Africa, Europe, West Asia, and North America. Most people infected with the West Nile virus do not experience any symptoms. About 20% who get infected will develop fever. However, for some people, particularly the elderly, symptoms can range from mild flu-like symptoms like fever, headache, body ache, fatigue. More severe complications can include meningitis or encephalitis, which can lead to neurological damage or even death. And how is the disease transmitted? Transmission happens when mosquitoes infected from feeding on infected birds bite humans. The disease can also spread through blood transfusion from an infected mother to her child or through exposure to the virus in laboratories. It's not known to spread by contact with infected humans or animals. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the incubation period for West Nile fever disease is typically 2 to 6 days, but it can range from 2 to 14 days and can be several weeks in immunocompromised people. To date, no human-to-human transmission of the West Nile virus through casual contact has been documented. It usually turns fatal in persons with comorbidities and immunocompromised persons like transplant patients. But the death rate is relatively low when compared to Japanese encephalitis, which shows similar symptoms. Which brings me to the next question. Why is it called the West Nile virus? You see, in 1937, the virus was first isolated in a woman in the West Nile district of Uganda. In 1953, it was identified in birds in the Nile Delta region. Before 1997, it was not considered pathogenic for birds, but then a more virulent strain caused the deaths of different bird species in Israel. They presented signs of encephalitis and paralysis. In 1999, a strain believed to be one circulating in Israel and Tunisia reached New York. It produced a large outbreak that spread across the US, and it eventually spread across the Americas from Canada to Venezuela. So what is the cure for the West Nile virus disease? Currently, none. No West Nile virus specific prevention, treatment or vaccine is available. Only supportive treatments are given. Health authorities globally advise personal protective measures to reduce the risk of mosquito bites, like using mosquito repellents, for example. Public health departments, meanwhile, are encouraged to use larval source reduction, especially at breeding and resting sites for mosquito vectors. In most countries, the peak for the infections generally coincides with the period when mosquito vectors are most active and ambient temperature is sufficiently high for the virus multiplication. Since outbreaks in animals happen before that in human beings, animals are monitored closely to detect new cases. In Kerala, the health minister has suggested wearing clothing that completely covers the body, using mosquito nets and repellents regularly, and keeping one's home and surroundings clean. Are you someone who consumes protein supplements, or are you thinking of making them a part of your life? Then this story is for you. Over the past few years, dietary supplements have become quite popular. There are a series of protein powders out there. Now, the Indian Council of Medical Research has warned that protein powders marketed as protein supplements may contain added sugars, non-caloric sweeteners and additives, making them unviable for regular consumption. And keeping this in mind, ICMR has advised against the consumption of protein supplements to build body mass. As a precautionary measure, the ICMR has released the Revised Dietary Guidelines for Indians, or DGIS, taking a cautionary stance on the use of protein supplements by urging Indians to avoid their consumption. Led by the health research body, the National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad, these guidelines stem from a meticulous process involving extensive research. Among the 17 listed guidelines, a notable emphasis has been placed on avoiding the prolonged intake of protein powders or high protein concentrates, citing potential health risks like bone mineral loss and kidney damage. The ICMR has urged people to obtain good quality proteins and essential amino acids through natural sources rather than investing in protein supplements to build muscle mass. Research findings indicate that dietary protein supplementation is associated with only a small increase in muscle strength and size during prolonged resistance exercise training or RET. Protein intake levels greater than 1.6 gram per kg a day do not contribute any further to RET-induced gains in muscle mass. As per the guidelines, adequate daily protein consumption can be achieved through a balanced diet containing protein from plant and animal sources. In fact, experts share that consuming pulses in a ratio of 3:1 or by substituting 30 grams of recommended level of pulses with 80 grams meat per day would improve protein quality for a normal person. On the other hand, it suggests plant-based protein-rich food sources include pulses such as green gram, horse gram, black gram, chickpeas, kidney beans, green peas, and one must also consider including nuts and seeds like walnuts, almonds, hazelnuts, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, sesame seeds, and more. The research body also recommended restricting salt intake, minimizing sugar and ultra-processed foods, and reading the information on the food labels to make informed and healthy food choices. These guidelines are aimed towards achieving the National Nutrition Policy goals. And on that note, we're taking a very short break. Stay with us. You're watching Gravitas.
As the Met Gala 2024 continues to live rent-free in the minds of fashion lovers, we tell you all about the sleeping beauties that woke up in the Garden of Time. We look at Hollywood stars and their relationship with sobriety and meet Indian actor Adil Hussain as he talks about the Cannes Film Festival, cinema and politics. All this and much more with me, Isha Hanspal, on WION E-Club at these times.
This week on Inside South Asia, India halfway into its mega general elections. 3 weeks, 283 seats sealed. Focus on Amethi and Raebareli voting in the 5th phase. Saudi Arabian delegation in Pakistan with a focus on investment and pulling the country out of an economic quagmire as the people cry out in helplessness. New Nepali currency note shows Indian territory as part of Nepal stirs up a long-standing row between the neighbours. And record heat and forest fires in Nepal and India to Pakistan's wettest April in decades. Weather extremes strike the region and beyond. This and more on Inside South Asia.
And welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us. You are watching Gravitas. A great rap battle is underway between Grammy-winning artists Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Both the artists have released songs to disparage and ruin the other's image. Yet, an issue that has nothing to do with women has seen women's pain and trauma being reduced to entertainment. Our next report getting you the details.
If you've been on the internet lately, you must have heard about the greatest rap feud in hip-hop history. The one between major rap artists and Grammy Award winners, Drake and Kendrick Lamar. They've been releasing diss tracks about each other for weeks now. For the unversed, a diss track is a song, especially rap song, released with the intent to disparage or attack another artist. In short, they are in a beef. But that's not what concerns us. What's particularly problematic is their usage of women as fodder for slinging insults at each other. It started as a competition to showcase skill and cultural competency. It kept hip-hop fans on the edge of their seats. However, it soon turned sour and unbearable to witness. Drake has accused Kendrick of cheating on and abusing his wife, to which Kendrick Lamar retorted by calling Drake a trafficker and a pedophile. Before we proceed, it's important to clarify that these are extremely serious allegations that concern issues involving trauma and suffering of multiple women. In the course of this very nasty exchange, both artists have made serious allegations of abuse against women, and they have done so in an incredibly casual and frivolous manner. This trivialization of these issues clearly reflects that neither artist cares enough about the alleged victims involved. If that wasn't enough, both rappers have accused each other of misogyny and have tried to weaponize the post-Me Too culture. In his song, Drake couples an allegation against Lamar with a derogatory joke about his height. In turn, Lamar talks about the severity of misogyny and the way in which abusers are protected in the music industry. But why now? Why has Lamar, who frequently addresses social inequality in his music, failed to explore this in previous music? It shows that both these men are fine being custodians of silence when speaking about it did not serve their agendas. I mean, these men are casually rapping about child sex abuse, about domestic abuse, about harboring secret children, about things that they've presumably known about for years. Why did they choose to reveal these secrets now? Why now, when the feud between them has nothing to do with women? Why are they using women's trauma as a weapon in a rap battle? Unfortunately, women have often become casualties of these rappers feuding. Remember, both Kendrick Lamar and Drake are known to be titans of their industry, with a massive fan following worldwide. Yet, these titans of the music industry have used women's pain and trauma as bartering chip to take down the reputation of another, just so they can bolster their own. Question: when the fight is so focused over who's a bigger misogynist, does anyone really win?
The South China Sea is once again making headlines. This time, Beijing is furious over an American destroyer in the waters. Why exactly is China fuming? And were the Americans provoking China? Our next report getting you the answers.
Beijing claims it tailed and issuing a warning to a US Navy ship in the South China Sea. China says its naval and air force was scrambled to counter the American guided missile destroyer USS Halsey. China says the ship's presence seriously violates its sovereignty and security. USS Halsey is the same ship that had upset China a few days back by sailing through the Taiwan Strait. US warships and occasionally US Navy patrol aircraft pass through or over the strait about once a month. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea, despite an international ruling that its assertion has no legal basis. It also deploys hundreds of Coast Guard, Navy and other vessels to patrol and militarize the waters. Maritime confrontations between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea have raised fears of a wider conflict that could involve the US and other allies. China has angered the Philippines by repeatedly harassing its Navy and Coast Guard ships. Manila says Chinese Navy has used several provocative moves, including powerful water cannons, a military-grade laser, blocking movements and other dangerous maneuvers in the high seas near two disputed South China Sea shoals. On Wednesday, the US and Philippine forces unleashed high-precision rockets, artillery fire and airstrikes and sank a mock enemy ship as part of large-scale war drills in the South China Sea. The drills have obviously antagonized Beijing. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Time now for Gravitas Recall. On this day in the year 1857, soldiers in Meerut began what would go on to become India's first war of independence, also known as the Revolt of 1857, or the Sepoy Mutiny. This was a revolt against the British East India Company, which at that time was ruling India on behalf of the British Crown. There were numerous factors that led to the revolt. The final spark was the Enfield pattern 1853 rifled musket.
This week on Take It Out, let's understand if it's right or wrong to convert a classic car into an electric vehicle. We explain how technology is set to transform the Paris 2024 Olympics. And we bring you a wrap of all the latest tech breakthroughs. This and more on WION World is One at these times.
Rains, misery, destruction, and death. Cyclone Hidea strikes East Africa as governments in Kenya and Tanzania struggle to protect millions from its wrath. A struggling town of El Hencha in Tunisia is gripped by an exodus of youth seeking a better life in Europe. And countries in Europe are in a rush to return treasures stolen during the pre- and post-colonial era to their countries of origin. Wild of Africa at 100. At these times, only on WION World is One.
of Makers of New India, we are featuring a brand that has changed the entire hand-woven carpet industry.
I took 5,000 rupees from my father as a loan and started this business. I thought that I must start this business with those artisans because they are rejected by the society.
Right now we are a global brand. We ship to 85 plus countries around the globe.
There are 18 different processes that goes into making the final product that you see at the showroom or the retail stores in India.
This week on Melt, why aren't creative agencies making enough money? The business of creativity, explained by talented Gautam Raghunath.
The way that agencies have been pricing ourselves historically is what? We're still pricing for employee hours, not on the value that we generate. And that's where the entire problem starts. Suresh, I think the simplest thing to do is first stop charging for input and start charging for value.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas